Hello and welcome to an exclusive hour-long programme with me, Alex Belfield, talking to a genius. Les Dennis, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. A genius tonight. Somebody the other day said a legend, which always worries me, the legend thing, because surely a legend is somebody who's gone.
There is that, isn't there? And then you look at what you're in now, which is a Eurovision parody, basically, called Eurobeat. Yeah. And the voice, I mean, you really should be in RADA or something. Quite remarkable. You play Sergei, don't you?
I do play Sergei, who is the Sarajevan host of a morning children's television show, only morning children's television show in Sarajevo. I've had fun playing him, and he's just such a character. And it's one of those things that the more you play him, the more layers you find with him, and he's just fun. He's a bit of a character, certainly.
This show is camper than Dale Winton's Knicker Drawer, isn't it? Let's be honest.
It is. It is an absolute camp fest. It's like adult panto. It's one of those shows that I think is the perfect antidote to the credit crunch, because, you might want to go along and see a heavy drama sometimes, and it's something I love to go and see. But maybe right now people want to escape, and this is the kind of show that people can escape with, because there are no demands on them other than to keep their phones on, which is unusual in a theatre, and to vote for their favourite country of the 10 countries that we introduce. And you've seen the show. The songs are catchy. The songs are funny and catchy.
It's a very clever show, and you're right. I think at this time, when we see the success of things like Mamma Mia, it is because people just want to leave their brain at the door. There's a lot going on, and this is the perfect show for leaving your brain at the door.
It is, absolutely. And I think it also taps into the X Factor, Britain's Got Talent kind of show, in the sense that because they've got to vote and they've got to root for somebody, they get involved and they think, oh great, we've got something to do. Actually, here in Nottingham on the Monday night, it was I was quite alarmed when they started shouting off at one of the countries, because they obviously thought that was their job, and then they settled down and realised, oh no, maybe we're just supposed to enjoy and kind of get involved, but not to that extent. Great for us though as hosts, because as well as an acting role, it's also a chance to flex your kind of ad-libbing muscles, because you never know what the audience is going to shout out at any given point in the show.
We're going to talk about your life and career, and what a career it's been, especially reading this new book and your biog, seeing how many different things you've done. Do you think most people who come and see this show realise that you're a comedian at heart and not a TV presenter who does quiz shows?
Probably not, because if you're involved in a show like Family Fortunes for as long as I was, 16 years, then that's what people associate you with, and that I have no problem with that, because it was a great show to be involved with. But they probably don't realise until they read the biog, or maybe read the book, exactly how long I've been in this business and how many different things I've done. The one thing I've always tried to do, and I think that you have to do nowadays, is reinvent, because there's no point, a lot of people say, oh, television's changed and we can't get on telly anymore. You've got to keep reinventing, otherwise you'll be left behind. I
want to talk about you for a while, because I don't think many people know much about you, because you're actually quite private. There have been things in your life that have drawn you to the front pages. What were you like as a child?
I suppose I was one of four kids. So I was. Let me see, 4 kids that were living. I lost my brother, so I was one of 5, and I was the kind of middle of that 5. And I think that what I believed, because my elder brother Roddy had died before I was born, I think I felt that I had to be the good son. So I was like the good boy. Didn't buck the system. Wasn't a rebel in any way. Wanted to please mum and my dad. Wanted particularly please my mum, whereas my brother Ken was the rebel in the family. So I suppose that's what I was. I was somebody who wanted to please, and I think that's maybe why I became an entertainer, because you want most entertainers or most actors and most comedians, they want to please their mum and dad, and so they then take it that much further, where they want to please an audience as well. They want the love.
And some psychologists have written much about that comedians are lonely people who need that attention. It's not always the case, is it?
Oh, no. I mean, it's very easy to talk about the sad clown and to talk about the kind of the tears behind a clown. And certainly that is there, but it's there in anybody's life, I think. So it's not all doom and gloom. No, it's I've had a great life. It's been a roller coaster life. It's not over yet either.
And then the passing of your mum and dad, you write about in the book so passionately. How do you begin to deal with that at such a young age?
Well, I think that I didn't deal with it at that age, and that was something that came back to haunt me later on. When my mum died, I was 23, 24. When my dad died, I was 29. So I lost both my parents before I was 30, and I think that I did the classic thing of throwing myself into my work, burying my grief, and not dealing with it. I went on stage the night after my mum died. My mum had cancer, and it was a long, prolonged illness. And in the end, it was quite a relief in the sense that we knew she was going to go. It was a terrible loss, but I just buried myself into my work. When my dad died, I was away in Bournemouth and didn't even know, because it was pre-mobile phones, and I weirdly that night had not left a contact for my then wife Lynn. So they couldn't get in touch with me, and I took that decision that night to go on stage and then travel home and then to go to the funeral, then go back to work, and there are things that I didn't deal with, and that's really the reason that I've called the book Must the Show Go On, because now with hindsight, now at a later stage in my life, but I suppose that's what it was. I remember the night that I'd found out my dad had died, and I was in Bournemouth. I was working with Russ Abbott, and he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I think I should stay and maybe do the show for my dad." But the show for my dad was my way of saying I'll hide and not go back. So I went on stage, and I can remember I used to do My Way, and do lots of impressions in the song, and I remember thinking to myself, this is for my dad, but it wasn't really, and again, that's only with hindsight that I realised that it was my way of hiding from what I had to deal with. Did your siblings ever resent the fact that you didn't come straight home? I think my brother Ken was quite frustrated, because he, it was in the middle of the night that my dad was on his deathbed, and they were all there, and he was ringing Lynn and saying, can you get in touch with Les? And she couldn't, because I hadn't left a number. But something in the back of my head knew that my dad wasn't well, and maybe again I was hiding from it. These are issues that I've dealt with in the book, because I think when you write about your life, you look back, and there's no point blaming somebody else for something that you got wrong. You've got to take accountability for the things you got wrong as well as for the things you got right, so it is something that I was thinking a lot about, so it's kind of easy for me to talk about right now, because it's the way I was thinking while I was writing it. Okay, we're on tour with Les Dennis today. As you can hear, we're in Star Dressing Room number 1 with the trams and the buses and the people walking past. We're going to come back next and talk about your beginnings in show business. We'll do it next on your favourite local radio station. We're back on your favourite local radio station. It's Alex Belfield talking to show business legend Les Dennis. You've had a remarkable career in terms of the ladies. Show business itself, though, was there a point, or was there one defining moment, when you thought, that's the business for me? When I was a kid, I never had a proper job in my life. So when I was a kid, I wanted to entertain. I don't know why, because it went against my personality. I was quite shy, and not the kind of life and soul of a party ever. So, but there was something in me that wanted to get up onto a stage, and it was probably when I was watching the shows like Sunday Night at the London Palladium, watching Jimmy Tarbuck, who was a Liverpool lad, had gone to the same school that I'd gone to before me, was the son of a bookmaker. My dad was a bookmaker, and he was like this glamorous fifth Beatle. He was like the floppy-haired, funny one at the time the Beatles were coming to the fore. So I think I was watching that show, and I thought, that's what I want to do. And it was only later, when I started doing the talent competitions at Butlins over the years. I did the junior talent competition, and then I went into the adult competition and won an adult competition and thought, maybe I can do this, and I started to believe it.
Why are so many people who come from Liverpool funny? Because even people who aren't famous seem to be funny from Liverpool.
I've just done a show called Les Dennis's Liverpool for Granada. It was a regional show. It was shown in the Northwest. And I went in search of this question. I really don't know the answer. All I know is that you know, we have produced some great comedians. We've produced some amazing talent. It's something to do with the river, I think. I think that there's something about a port. Newcastle has it. You know, it has that kind of sharp sense of humour. Cockneys, Londoners have it. You know, there's something about it being a cultural melting pot, I think, and Liverpool certainly was. You know, that in the 50s, 60s. So maybe that's the reason. But going round, I would meet some people. Mike McShane, a mate of mine, who's just been on tour with Paul Merton doing their improv show. He said that the wittiest and the funniest requests came from the Liverpool audiences. You know, one of them shouted when asked for a Shakespearean suggestion, came up with, "What about Snack Beth?" So, you know, it's just, so Mike said that they had a ball with that because it was just a funny answer. So I don't know what it is, other than maybe just that we sometimes laugh in the face of adversity, and we've hidden our light under a bushel for a long time. We've got capital of culture now, but we've always had culture. It's just that the spotlight's on it now.
And what about the difference between Liverpudlians and Scousers? There seems to be a contretemps between the two.
Scally probably is the word that I consider myself a Liverpudlian and a Scouser, and maybe the Scally mentality is something that sometimes can be embarrassing, but that can be anywhere. I mean, for Scally, read Chav. You know, in any city, you have people who maybe kind of are always going to say, well, what's the city done for me? That was something that I always worried about at the beginning of the year, when, you know, a lot of people in Vox Pops for capital of culture, you had some people who, you know, a lot of Liverpoolians behind it really wanted it, and of course you get the odd one, you know, standing there in Williamson Square going, what's the city ever done for me? But my answer to that is, it's that Kennedy quote of, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And I think that's what we have to get behind, and that's the mentality we have to have. And sometimes we do like a whinge. It is something in our nature, but on the other side we can be very positive.
All right, we're going to take another piece of music, then we'll be back asking the question, were you a funny child?
Okay.
We're back on your favourite local radio station talking to Les Dennis today. Were you a funny child?
I was the child who worked at being funny by watching the likes of Jimmy Tarbuck, by watching Ken Dodd, by watching the Dick Van Dyke Show. I built up, I realised that I wanted to be like those guys, so I started to do impressions from a very young age. So I worked at it. I wouldn't say that funny is particularly, you know, my bag. I think I'm a better comedy actor than I am a comedian. Give me a script and give me a role, then and if it's funny, I can be funny in that role. And certainly with something like Family Fortunes, the fun and the humour came out of the ridiculous answers that they gave, and I would become a conduit for that. And just to look down the camera could be as funny as a quip. You know, I wouldn't say that I'm a quippy one-liner comic.
So you've never wanted to be a stand-up as such? Because when you look at the old days with Dustin, it was character stuff, wasn't it, in the impressions and the costumes you wore? You never wanted to do the Comedy Store or anything like that?
I never did, because it wasn't what I was good at. I admire those comedians that are, you know, very quick and who write all their own stuff. I think, you know, going to Edinburgh last year and the year before, I loved it. I loved going to see as many comics as possible, and really interested in some of the newer guys. You know, there seems to be this belief that old school comedians don't like the new school, and vice versa. It's not true. They showed me enormous welcoming and almost respect. It was kind of like, welcome in. You know, it was like going into Comedy Mordor to go to Edinburgh as an old style comic. But I was there with a play both times, and the second time was a particularly funny play, so I was playing a character. But it did make me think that maybe I would like to go back and do a stand-up in Edinburgh maybe next year or the year after, because but more of a kind of retrospective, being myself. When I did the comedy festival in Liverpool recently, and one of the reviews said Les Dennis seems to have made a career out of being Les Dennis, and I thought, well, what else am I supposed to make a career out of? So I'm good at being myself, and I think that Bob Monkhouse once said to me, he said, Les, you're not the funniest comedian in the world, but you've got charm, you know, and you've got a charm offensive, so use that. And so maybe I've taken that on board.
It is an interesting thing what Bob said, because you do have a likeable factor. I think that's why you lasted so long on Family Fortunes. You don't get many hosts these days with the kind of career you have had in quiz shows, because it's about the people, isn't it? You can never allow that element to be outshone by either the quiz or the money or anything. It really was about the people. It
is very much about the people, and to me, being a host of a quiz show or a game show, what is important is exactly the same importance that is to, if you're a host of a party. You've got to welcome the people in. So my job was to be there and say to them, are you ready? Are you okay? Are you happy? And I rehearse with them in the day. You get some quiz show hosts who don't rehearse with the public and don't meet them till they get out there. My job was to make them feel relaxed in the way that you'd go around a party and say, you sure you've got a glass of wine there? You've got something to eat, and look after them. It just works for me that way, rather than to take the mickey out of them. It just wouldn't work.
There's some great answers that you had on Family Fortunes. You remember the bird with a long neck, things like that. What were your favourites?
Well, the answer to that, of course, was Naomi Campbell. That was a fantastic answer from the guy. I think what was good about the show, and what we realised was, and we tried to instill in the families, was, you know, when you go down the line and you've got or whatever, or you've got one person that's given an answer and then the second one comes up with something else, it becomes really difficult, because then you think, oh, that was my answer, that was what I wanted to say. So we used to say something, don't just go, I don't know. So that's when we used to get the best answers, when they literally thought of the most ridiculous thing, and you could not legislate for those answers. But Naomi Campbell, that was a great answer. I think name a TV soap. Dove was a great one. Name somewhere you might stand in a queue. At the front. You know, they were just amazing names. The famous one, of which actually happened to Bob Monkhouse, not to me. Name something that's pink, and the woman said, my cardigan. You know,
and the most dangerous race?
Well, you know what? I don't remember that one actually happening, and I think that the answer was the Arabs. I think it was something that I think Gary Bushell might have made that up and put it in the Sun, and it became a supposed answer. But I don't remember that one happening, and maybe it was before my time. There was some weird off-the-wall ones. There was also the guy with turkey, the guy that answered turkey to everything. And I mean, literally, that was a Max Bygrave show again, and the question was, it was in the five questions in 15 seconds. Name something that you take to the beach, and he went, turkey. Name something in a kitchen, he said, turkey. Then he said, name a bird you cook at Christmas, he went, turkey. They reckon that when he put the headphones on and was sat there, he might have heard, you know, something, and just had this in his head, you know, that turkey is the answer. So you can't legislate for them, and it was great. If I ever got a stupid answer, I would just, you know, look into camera and go, thank you God, what a great. That was my favourite one, the guy that came to the lockout, young lad, and the question was, name something associated with Dracula, and he just banged the buzzer and went, Bob Monkhouse. To this day, I haven't got a clue what he was on about.
All right, we'll be back next with Les Dennis here on your favourite local radio station. Next, we talk the ladies. We're back on your favourite local radio station. It's Alex Belfield in Star Dressing Room number 1 here at Eurobeat with Les Dennis. Next bit of the book I want to talk about is your beginnings with romance. You seem to have had a lot, and congratulations and well done for that.
Not particularly. No, I don't think particularly a lot.
By my standards, you've had a lot.
I'm 54.
Let's talk about your first wife and your first child.
Yeah.
Some great pieces. I don't know whether you like me, with any book that I read, the first thing I do is look at the pictures, because they tell the story actually better than the story itself. You looked so young, and then the next picture you have a baby in your arms. It really was an incredible turnaround.
Yeah, literally Lynn and I was 20, she was 19 when we married, and we looked like babies. I mean, there's a photo in the book where I'm with my best man, Hemster Winter, and I unwisely chose a best man who was 6'7". So the photographer took a photograph of us, and I stood on the step of the church so that the height difference would be different, not realising that the photographer had actually didn't crop it. So there's me, it goes all the way to the feet, and there's me obviously standing on this step and I still look like a dwarf next to him. So Lynn and I were very young, but we're in love. You know, we met at school. We were at school with an extraordinary group of people: Clive Barker, the horror writer, Jude Kelly, who's now the chair of the Olympics, and Doug Bradley, who was Pinhead in those movies, Brian Barwick and Steve Coppell. It was an amazing time and a kind of an interesting group of people that were there at that time. And Lynn and I fell in love and married very young. I suppose we married so young because I was touring. It was either that or I'd have gone away and we wouldn't have seen each other.
It's an interesting point you make, and that was going to be my next question. How easy is it to be married and be faithful and love someone when you rarely see them?
Well, we travelled together, but, I lost my way, and in the book, again, I chronicled the fact that those deaths made me put family on the back burner. It's something now, with hindsight, I realised that was the most maddest thing to do. I was obsessed with my career. I was obsessed with the idea of getting somewhere, and every time I did get somewhere, the rug seemed to be pulled from beneath me. When I had that success with Dustin, after 2 years he died and I had to start again. It was much worse for him than it was for me. I put family onto the back burner.
Is it like a drug then? Is it something that once you start, it's very hard to give up?
Oh yeah, it's show business is a drug, in the sense that you are always being told by people, you just said to me genius. I'm not a genius. It's very easy to believe your own publicity, to believe that you are something special. And when I was younger, and when Dustin and I were on telly on a Saturday night and also on a Sunday night, we're being asked to do the Royal Variety Performance, we're being asked to headline in summer seasons, I just thought I was the bee's knees. So it's very easy to believe the publicity.
I think in this business it's very easy to get the gig. Keeping it's the difficult one.
Yeah.
And every year with Family Fortunes, I don't know what contract you were on, but there must have been a thought, is there somebody younger, better looking, more talented or cheaper that could do the job? And in the end, that happens to everybody. No matter how big you are, eventually your show finishes, doesn't it?
It does. Absolutely, and you've just got to be aware of that. When I started Family Fortunes, I thought this will maybe last 2 years, and then 16 years later I was still doing it. When ITV decided that they wanted to move it to the daytime schedules, I thought that's okay, but the show is going to be compromised, and I've had the best years from it. And it's no secret in the book that I do give away there's another reason why I gave that show up, and I won't mention that because it's something to read. It will come to an end, as anything will, and then you've just got to regroup. Even on my own, I had to regroup and think, right, I've got to change direction. And that's why over the years, while I was doing Family Fortunes, I made sure that I went out and did a play every year. Went to a local rep. I went to Oldham Rep. I went to the Watermill in Newbury. I went to the Chester Gatehouse for equity minimum, to learn the craft of stage acting, something that I'd always wanted to do ever since those days with Clive Barker and Jude Kelly, and we'd been part of that drama group. So to me, it was important to do that, so that when the show did end, I had something that I could turn to.
What is that feeling like when you're sat there on a Saturday evening and you're no longer the star of ITV, and you're no longer the man that everybody wants as the big star, and you're going to have to do something else? How do you psychologically cope with that? Because for 16 years you had a crew of 100 people at your beck and call, and you were the star. I know you can say, oh, well, I was humble and I was nice, and actually I don't hear any bad things about you. I didn't hear tantrums or anything like that, which you do with a lot of people, but it still must hit you like a ton of bricks when you sit there and think, I'm just me now.
Yeah, you do think, right, well, is there any chance of me getting that kind of show again? And it's not easy, because it's a changing business. They do, certainly, there is a belief that hosts should be younger, well, I was younger then. I'm unlikely to get that kind of show at my age, though. Having said that, you look at Noel Edmonds, you look at Des O'Connor, and they're still doing prime time shows. And I actually did the pilot for the show that Noel does, A Deal or No Deal, and it was between him and me in the end. So you do wonder what's going to happen. At the time, I thought it seems to be over. So what I did was I went into reality. I went into the Big Brother house, because that seemed to be the one way that I'd watched people reinvent and kickstart their careers.
Okay, we'll come back next in our remaining moments and talk about the Big Brother years, the Amanda and Holden years. We'll do it next here on your favourite local radio station. We're back with our remaining moments here on your favourite local radio station, talking today to Les Dennis. You mentioned there Big Brother, and I think what we've learnt since is that you can't control how those programmes are edited. That's the truth, isn't it?
The advice that I took from myself was to have watched the first one, the comic relief one. That was my mistake. By watching that and thinking it's quite gentle, it's not as harsh as the actual Big Brothers, and because it was being done for comic relief, certainly they had power of editing. Richard Curtis and et al. Had the power of editing on that, and Claire Sweeney rebooted her career. I mean, she was already in Brookside, but that we suddenly saw a side to Claire that that we hadn't seen before, and I thought, well, maybe I can do that as well. But obviously, when the second series happened, Endemol were in charge of that editing. But and when I came out, it coincided with the end of my marriage. It coincided with the downturn in my career. So I got a lot of negative press when I came out, even though I'd come second to Mark Owen. But and so I decided not to read any of that press. I decided not to look at the show, and it was only when I was writing the book that I decided to look back at it. And Claire, my partner, and I watched it over a weekend. We watched it back to back. I got the producers to send me the DVDs, and we watched it back to back. It was like watching 24, but I was having a worse day than Jack Bauer ever did. But and what I realised by watching it was, hands up, I was having a difficult time. Whether it was edited, and certainly some things were edited to highlight that.
What is that feeling like when you see a front page or a major headline and it's absolute nonsense, but you have absolutely no right of reply?
When I came out of the house and I realised that they had apparently been on Amanda Watch, they were checking what Amanda was doing every day I was in the house, and when I realised how much media coverage there had been, particularly when I read that apparently I was on suicide watch, and Mike Reed was very concerned about me. Now, Mike, who's no longer with us, I'd met a few times, but he was not a friend of mine. So I'm sure he was as shocked to read that he was looking out for me as I was. I think what they just decided was, hang on, let's think who would be looking out for Les, and it'll be an old style comedian. So let's pick Mike Reed. When you read those kind of headlines, when you read that you're being comforted by Diana Ross which is absurd. I mean, she talked in the press saying, "I don't know the guy, but I wish him well." When you read these things, you can only laugh, really, because they are so absurd. And the thing at that time was not to read them at all, and it's only that later I read them and laughed.
You said earlier you were in a bad place. It was not going great for you. Let's talk about the Amanda and Holden years for a short while. How did you meet?
We met in Bournemouth when I was doing a show called Don't Dress for Dinner at the pier there with Sue Pollard, Lionel Blair, Vicky Michelle. Great farce, which is actually the follow-up to Boeing Boeing, which has just been such a big hit in the West End. Don't Dress for Dinner is a good farce, and we were there, and Amanda was in The Sound of Music at the Pavilion, and we met at one of those show business bashes, got on well, and started what seemed like a holiday romance that summer, and then it went on. She was 22, I was 38, 39, I think, 38, 39. Big age difference. I thought we were just going to have fun for that summer, but then it continued.
Did that ever bother you? Because even looking at the photos, which are still in the book, you look at Vicky Michelle, who's gorgeous, you look at Sue Pollard, who's delicious, and you look at you, and then you see Amanda stood there. It did look odd. I mean, she wasn't really in your showbiz circle, was she?
No, she wasn't in my circle, but she was in another show in town, so it wasn't, it wasn't as if that's the belief that there's, the variety end and there's the straight theatre end. They get merged, and as it happens, I'm doing more theatre work now, and Amanda's doing presenting on telly, so that's the way it goes.
Did it ever occur to you that her reasons for wanting to know you, in the beginning at least, could have been disingenuous?
No, in the beginning, I don't think at all. I think we definitely had something together. If you were to ask Amanda, there was love between us. There was, we were together for 10 years. You don't stay with somebody for 10 years just when you've got a plan to get on. Amanda had got on by within 5 years. So, you don't stay with somebody for another 5 years. I think that the idea that people could think that I could fast track her is ridiculous anyway. I couldn't, like you just said, she was in the theatre side, I was in the variety side. So what jobs could I get for her?
A cynic could say, oh, well, you were a big star and she could jump on your bandwagon. That's all I'm implying.
Yeah, I see what you mean, but I don't think that that actually happened. I think that Amanda at that time was as ambitious as I was when I was that age, but I think that she had her own path to follow.
Thank God you've moved on from all of that negative stuff. It's so nice to see that people are glad to talk to you now, and the press seem to be on your side again. I think the truth of it is, it didn't matter whether you were Les Dennis or you as a person. They just need something to write about, and for a while you were the one they wanted to have a go at.
It was an amazingly interesting triangle. There were three people who were very famous, or rather, there was. It was almost like A Star Is Born, the kind of the classic movie. There was the James Mason-esque. Supposedly washed up game show host, the young starlet, and there was the kind of bad boy actor. So that was always going to run for a long time, and it ran for, people say fish and chip paper, tomorrow's fish and chip paper, but it wasn't for a very long time. When you got cars outside your house at 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night for 6 weeks, that it's a story that's going to run, and it ran as long as it did. And again, by writing the book, I realized that I got off on it to some extent. I got off on the likeable Les. Bob Monkhouse again rang me and said, when it was all happening, he said, Les, you've always been liked by the public, but now you're loved. And I thought, oh, am I? Maybe I can use this. And I think I pushed that a bit too far, and then there was a backlash where people thought idiot, Les is an idiot, and went and the press turned against me. But you know what, I don't have any anger at the press. I did at the time. I don't anymore, because it's what we ask for, it's what we want. Now I'm much more kind of private in the sense that, I mean, here I am talking to you about my life, but I'm more but then, you know, I've got things that I want to do it for. But I'm much more private in the sense that my family is guarded, you know, and it that when I go through the door and close my door, I'm Les Heseltine, I'm not Les Dennis. For a while I forgot who Les Heseltine was, and Les Dennis was all I was.
Some things very finally then before we go. Yeah. The countdown job's going. Des is leaving. Are you up for that?
No, I've not been asked. So you'd have to ask the people, the powers that be, whether I'm up for it. It's a great show. It's been a great show. Maybe it should be. It's been Des. Maybe it go Des Les. Maybe that's the way it's supposed to go. I don't know. If I was asked, I would certainly consider and be flattered that they'd considered me. Apparently, I heard that on LBC, people were ringing up and suggesting me, which is nice again, but because it means that people haven't forgotten, and that's what happens in this business. Is we're always in that situation where we think, oh God, I hope they don't forget me. You know, even though I'm doing stage work, I'm not on telly. I hope they don't forget me. And in the book, I write this thing where I talk about the stages. You know, who's Les Dennis? Get me Les Dennis. Get me a young Les Dennis. Get me let me start again. Who's Les Dennis? Get me a Les Dennis. Get me a Les Dennis type. Get me a young Les Dennis. Who's Les Dennis? That's the fear of any entertainer in this business. But if people are talking about me on the phone, that's fine.
So you're up for it if they offer?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't even thought about it.
But I'll give you something to do, won't you?
Yeah, it'll give something to ponder in the next hour while I'm getting ready as Sergei, putting my wig on.
Congratulations on the baby. Had a baby this year. How's that going?
Fantastic. She is absolutely beautiful, and it's changed my life. Barry Cryer said 54 is a great age to be a new dad because you're up 3 times a night anyway. So which is a great gag, and I'm dining out on that one. But it is truly wonderful. She is a gift that I didn't expect at my stage in life, as is Claire, my partner, and I couldn't be happier. And you can't wipe, as you can see, you can't wipe the smile off my face. Even when you start talking to me about all the ladies I've had. What ladies?
We had Amanda, I mean, come on. I think the thing that did turn you around was that Extras thing with Ricky Gervais. To be in his company couldn't do anybody any harm, but to see that you have a sense of humour. Yeah, when I got the script from Ricky and Stephen, I just looked at it and thought, this is quite tough, and it's quite... You know, there was talking about. There's a point where I'm saying to him, you know, when I was in the Big Brother house, I thought of suicide. Freudian, I nearly said committed suicide there. But you know, and there was some really dark moments in it, including the dressing room scene. And I remember thinking, this can go one of 2 ways. But if I really grasp it and I show that I have a sense of humour about it, I can draw a line under the things that people believe about me. The Les Miserables tag that was around for a while, and it was a gift for me to do that. And if I hadn't done Big Brother, I wouldn't have got that. So you know, every cloud has a silver lining in the end. I'm so sorry that I've got a microphone in my hand because I can't give you a round of applause for your backside. I mean, what a thing that is. Oh, absolutely. When I went to see Ricky and Stephen, I remember that they taught me through the whole thing, and I was like, this is great, this sounds great. They said you'd be playing a twisted, demented version of yourself. And then as I was leaving the room, it was almost like Columbo. They said, one more thing. There's a naked scene. I'll do it. It'll be fine. You know what? I worked out. I've decided to go to the gym. I worked out, but in the end, I thought, shall I get one of those American tans? Shall I hold it all in the scene? And I thought, no. If I go for an American tan, if I kind of stand there trying to hold my stomach in, it's going to look ridiculous. You've got to go for it. You've got to really let it all hang out. And I did. But the only thing for Ricky's, for his sake, I wore a cricket box so that he didn't have, as he called it, Les's offal in his face. Congratulations on being you. I'm such a big fan because you've been doing it so long, and you're a real show business trooper. You're not in it for the glamour or the headlines or seeking publicity like so many are. I was for a while. There were those middling years. You know, I kind of got off on the whole celebrity for being a celebrity's sake, but it's not what I came into the business for, and it's certainly not what I want now. I just want to do good work. And must the show go on is in your stores now? It really is an interesting read. You've had such a long career, met so many people, and those stories are always interesting, and it's very, very honest, buttock-clenchingly honest at times, and that takes bravery, and thanks for that, because to see the real show business is not all champagne and smiles, is it?
It's not, and I was determined that I had two things. I wanted to write it myself. I didn't want to ghostwrite it because I wanted it to be my voice, good or bad, and also I wanted it to be warts and all. And so many times I've heard people say this is a warts and all tale, and I've read it and I've started to read and thought, I know this about you. This thing happened to you here, and you've actually glossed over it. You've pretended it hasn't happened, or you've dealt with it in a paragraph, and it's made me put a book down. I wanted to be true to myself and to an audience, and to be accountable. Like I was talking about before, you have to be accountable for the things you got right, but also for the things you got wrong.
Les Dennis, showbiz legend, thank you for talking to me.
Cheers, Alex, thank you.